Shannon from Bowfreaks Archery. Just wanted to cover a few things on saddles. Obviously, I know you guys have probably seen it, but we do have a test tree in the shop here that you can come in and try any of our saddles or our platforms we have in stock, and we can kind of go over some of the benefits of each of those and find something that's in your budget that'll work for what you're wanting to accomplish out of saddle hunting. So first one that I've got on here is a trophy line Nimbus, and we're going to talk about a few things on some of these saddles, and then I'll show you my Venatic saddle that I'm actually using and some of the modifications I've done with it. So a lot of the kind of the higher end saddles will come with an Amsteel bridge. So this is a little bit different material than your tether material. Some of the lower end saddles will just come with a tether for this piece here. So the Amsteel gives us a couple of things that are beneficial about it. This one comes with a carabiner where you can pop it off here. Makes it easier to get into these because you don't have to step through this if it's tied in directly, but there are some cons to having this, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So obviously you're setting your tether at the height you want, and we'll talk about using a Prusik knot and a ropeman a little later here on another saddle that I'll have set up. So adjusting this up against your tether to kind of hold it in place, but you obviously can pull that Prusik down and move it as needed, but it is a little stiff to move, and we'll show you how much easier a ropeman is on another saddle here in a minute. But so once you get all this set, there's a couple ways to adjust it. Obviously you can move your tether height up and down, and that will change the angle. You can also move your bridge, and this is called your bridge, up and down by moving this. So one thing when you set down in these, the one thing we talk about with using a carabiner here is it's always going to self-center. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but what it doesn't allow you to do is move this around to maybe get a little bit more pressure on the bottom versus the bottom part of the saddle, because it's always going to center itself. So that's one. Again, it's quick and easy to get into, but that to me is a little bit of a drawback. And it's not that you need to buy anything different with this saddle. You would just take this carabiner out, undo your knot, and there's a couple different knots we can talk about when you come in and do this, and you can actually take this Amsteel and go straight to your bridge. Once you do that, that Amsteel will actually bite like it is on this other side over here, and you can actually move it up and down where it attaches to your saddle, and that will change the pressure points of the bottom of the saddle or the top of the saddle. Obviously, if you come further up, it's going to put more pressure on the back. If you go further down, it's going to put more pressure on your lower of your butt and your top of your legs. And again, since everybody's body's a little bit different, it may be more comfortable with more pressure on the bottom versus the top, but that gives you the ability to do that once you tie in directly, and you can actually move that around. So again, and I'm standing on right now a trophy line Mission platform. It's a fairly big platform. One of the nice thing is on something that's a little bit bigger is you can actually stand up. You don't have to have this, so it gives you some relief of always being in the saddle position, because you can actually maneuver around on your tree and not actually be using the saddle to support you at that point. So again, this is just a trophy line Nimbus, and we're going to talk about a couple other saddles here in a second. So we'll start with that. Okay, so now we're on to the next saddle that we want to talk about, and this is an XOP saddle that they have, and it actually comes in a kit. We got a couple kits. One of them's roughly in the $200 range, the other one's in closer to the $300 range, but it actually gets you a saddle system, and it actually comes with a platform as well. So it's a pretty good way to get into it. A couple of the features I do like on this one. This one can be ran as a saddle, but this actually has shoulder straps, which makes it more like a conventional harness. So if we were going to use this like a conventional harness, we could turn around on this and grab the tether cord or the loop back here, and we can actually tie this in and actually run this as a standard harness hooked in from the back. So you would be tethered in just like sitting in your tree stand like you are today with your normal safety harness. So it works as both a saddle and a safety harness both. If you're running some standard configurations out of a lock-on stand that's hanging up, again, you can just tether back in, hook it to your loop back here, and it's just a regular harness at that point. But if you're going to run it as a saddle, you just come back around and loop in your bridge and you're set up. In the previous video, we talked about some of the things that we like and don't like. This one has a bigger, it's basically using a tether for the bridge, which is also potentially your lineman's belt as well. And again, it always self-centers, and because it's a bigger rope system on this other side, it tends to self-center on here as well. So one of the things that I would probably modify in the system, if this is the one I was going with, would be to change this out to an Amsteel bridge and lock it in, so you can change that position on this again, so you can get a little more pressure or less pressure on the top and bottom of your saddle. But for the price, this one's really hard to beat. Kind of gives you a saddle and a safety harness in one, and you get a decent sized platform for either $200 or around $300, depending on which platform that you decide to go with in the configuration with the saddle. So again, a nice little a little harness, and because it has the ability to run as a normal safety harness, it has the drop down thing, so you can get the relief off your legs in case you do fall. So it has a few more things on it because it's running ability to run both ways. But again, not a bad way to get started in this system because of the price point on it. So again, we'll go to another saddle after this. And this is the last saddle I wanted to talk about. This is the Trophy Line Fanatic. It was a newer saddle that kind of came out with their Hyperlight platform and sticks this year. So this is actually the saddle I'm running. And again, this one originally came with a carabiner hooked here, but we flopped it around and actually tied in directly. And again, we can talk about a couple different knots here, both of which allow you to slide up or down and kind of get some adjustment lengthwise on that. But the nice thing about this, if I want a little more pressure on my legs, I can slide that down on both sides, and now it's pulling a little tighter here. If I want a little more on my back, I can move it up here. So throughout the day, if you're getting a little pinch someplace, a little too much, or it's kind of bothering you, you just basically take the pressure off of them, and you can adjust them up and down, and again, change that pressure points on that saddle to make it a little more comfortable for you. For me, this one fits my hips and my legs a little bit better than some of the other ones. So the next thing I want to talk about on this is, again, this is your typical setup with a Prusik knot up here. Again, we can adjust this on height and length, but it is a little harder to kind of move that up and down to get it where we want it. So it takes a little more time to do that, but obviously you can still do it. Again, and as you're turning, that Amsteel slides a little bit better than having just a regular tethered rope up here. Makes turning either way pretty easy. But I'll show you the difference again. What I've done here is, on my setup, I'm actually running a ropeman with that carabiner. So when I'm in it like this, if I need to make quick adjustments, I'm just grabbing this carabiner if I need to come down, or grabbing this ropeman if I need to come down. You're pulling this out, I can slide it up and down pretty easy, but going up is super easy on these. You just grab the rope, pull it up, grab this, come down. So you can get your height really quickly with this versus grabbing that Prusik knot and kind of having to kind of wedge it down. So again, it gives you a little bit quicker adjustment to make to your length of how you want it. We can still run, again, we can still run some out of this, but we don't have as much room to work on this as we do on this, depending on the height that you want to have your tether attached to the tree. So again, this is the Trophy Line Fanatic. We have a few of these in stock as well. But again, you can try any of these out with any of the platforms here at Bowfreaks Archery. and make sure we get you what you're really looking for, and you get to try it before you actually walk out the door. So stop in and see us, and we can talk about some saddles. Thanks.